Good afternoon. My time started, so I'm going to get going. As you know, I've got 12 to 18 minutes max. What I'm going to tell you about today is how I lost my first job in India and how that actually got me to specialize in cross-cultural management. And I'm going to talk to you about time, how different perceptions of time exist, and how does that impact collaboration on a daily basis? How do we, connect people who have a different perception and manage their time differently? So as you can see, my title, What Time Is It? I had to find a title. I thought that one sounded catchy. You'll tell me at the end of the session whether I was right or not. So let me start with a story. Just over 10 years ago, I was working for a call center, a relatively small call center, that was run by a family. So it was part of a family business. And in this company, I was in charge of training. And one of my responsibilities was, of course, being able to assess our training vendors, the kind of quality of work they did, and so on and so forth. Anyway, every week we had a meeting from 3 to 4 on Thursdays with my boss, with the whole team. We had that weekly meeting, Thursday, 3 to 4. So one of these weeks, maybe the third or fourth week in my job, I actually asked one of our vendors to come and meet me at 4 o'clock on Thursday. Anyway, team meeting starts at 3, goes on, and we arrive at 3:55, and I look at my watch and realize that we're nowhere near finished with this meeting. Okay, the conversation had gone on, interesting conversation nevertheless, but the meeting was nowhere near over, and no one seemed to like they were going to stop the meeting right now. So what I did is I actually stood up, excused myself, took my stuff, and told people, please send me the minutes of meetings, any action items I can take, please feel free to give them to me, I'll be more than happy to do this, and left the room to go and meet my supplier, my vendor. Anyway, go meet him, sit down with him, go through the different programs they're doing, et cetera, the usual vendor manager job. And after about 45 minutes, our meeting is done, and I go back to the open space where we're all sitting. And as I come back to my seat, I actually see some of my colleagues look at me weirdly. I don't know, maybe something happened in the meeting. Who knows? We'll see. I'm sure I'll get the minutes of the meeting, so maybe something happened. Anyway, I sit down and my phone rings. And that's my boss on the phone. Now, I don't get my boss on the phone very often. So I'm saying, oh, okay, why is he calling? He usually comes and see me or asks me to come and see him, right? So he calls me. Guillaume, do you think we could go and have a cup of coffee? Now, that was the first time. Ever since day one, he'd invited me for a cup of coffee. And the tone of voice said something was wrong. And as I go to meet him, I'm thinking, what could it be? I don't know, is there something went wrong with one of our projects, maybe one of our trainers, one of our vendors, I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, go sit down, we grab a cup of coffee, we sit down. He looks at me very aggravated and asks me, why do you have no respect for us? I beg your pardon? That really caught me really hard because I really didn't expect that. And yeah, I've got the feeling you absolutely have no respect for your team, he goes on. And there, but where does this come from? I get along well with you. I think I get along well with my colleagues. I really enjoy the work. I'm really happy working here. I really don't understand where that comes from. And he looks at me and just, how can you give more importance to a vendor than to your team? I'm there, but I'm not giving more importance to the vendor. We had a meeting from 3 to 4. Comes 4 o'clock. If we're not finished our meeting, why should he wait because we can't manage our time properly? I don't see any reason why he should wait because we didn't finish on time. Long story short, that was the end of my career in this company. Okay, 2 or 3 weeks. In 2 or 3 weeks, my job was emptied of its substance. No more email, no more invites to meeting. You know how it is when people want to push someone out from a company. They did that very well and then actually succeeded. Okay, 3 weeks later, I was actually putting my papers in and leaving the job. And I was really gutted. I was really disappointed because I was really interested in the job. I wanted to do it, and I did not understand what happened. Now, since I was out of a job, I had a bit of time to actually think about it. Okay, and I actually started looking about trying to understand what happened that day. And I tried to take event by event. And one of them that came out, that struck me is, okay, 3:55, I left. And apparently after that, something happened. So I started looking and doing a bit of research. Google's a fantastic tool for that. And did a bit of research and started looking. And apparently, there's people who live time differently? People who manage time differently? Really? Now, I'd heard about Indian stretchable time before that, but I always thought it was a joke. Okay, people are using that, and they said, apparently there's more to it than that. And so I started doing a bit of research on different definitions of time. Do people live and experience and manage time differently? And whereas I didn't have the time to go through all 283 official countries on this planet, I looked at the ones that are familiar to me. Okay, so let's say the Judeo-Christian world, because I lived in a lot of the countries that make the Judeo-Christian world today, and India, okay, since I was living here. And I realized that we had two diagonally opposite definitions of time. If you look at the Judeo-Christian definition of time, and if you read the Bible, it actually says, when God created the world, on the first day he creates the world, one of the very first thing he creates is time. Before that, there was no time. And at the end of Apocalypse, when God destroys the world, he stops time. That means that in the Judeo-Christian tradition, as we can see here, time is a finite commodity with a very clear beginning, a very clear end, and a very strong sense of direction. And that's the Judeo-Christian definition of time. Now, what I learned reading the Mahabharata, I was lucky enough to read Rajaji's Mahabharata, which is approachable for a layman like me. What I learned, is that time was defined slightly differently. 4 yugs, okay? Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Apparently, we're experiencing Kali Yuga right now. Okay, I can't wait for the next one to start. Apparently, it's going to be even nicer. So I know there's different traditions, and sometimes there's more yoga. Time is defined in Hindu mythology with more than 4. I'll accept the most common one. This is the most common one. So anyway, what that tells us, and what I learned, is that at the end of Kali Yuga, the world is destroyed but recreated again, but time never stops. Which means that in the Hindu tradition, time is an infinite commodity. It never starts, it never stops. These are two completely different ways of understanding time, which is the most universal thing that we all live. I thought, that's interesting. I started talking about it to a few people who I learned were cross-cultural specialists. I thought, wow, that's a field? Really? You can do that? I thought, that's my life. I don't know, I could actually earn a living from that. Anyway, talked to these people, and they actually told me, yes, there's a lot of theory behind that, so I'm not going to bore you with Hofstede, Trompenas, and all these. I'm sure you don't know all of them. But they gave me the literature to try and explain to me what happened, to try and explain to me how these were defined differently, and also introduced me to the research that was done in the last few decades. And I thought that was fascinating. Because what I learned is that why I lost my job was because my boss and I had two very different ways of managing our time. Coming from a linear culture, okay, where time has a direction and is a line. And if you remember your history classes, when we were asked to do timelines, they had a beginning and they need to have an end. That's a very good illustration of the Judeo-Christian tradition that we've all had to work with in our history classes when we were students. So to come back to my boss and I 10 years ago, what I realized is that because of our different perceptions of time, he looked at time in a much more relationship-oriented manner than I did. In a linear tradition where time is finite, there's a lot of value put to people who can do a maximum number of tasks in a minimum amount of time and who manage their time very tightly. Whereas in a culture where time is perceived as infinite, it has created a relationship-driven mindset, a relationship-oriented mindset when people manage their time. That means that the amount of time people will spend with someone depends on the relationship they have with them. But that's not how I see time. For me, time is separate, fixed boundaries, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, whoever I spend my time with. So that's for my story. Now, how does this apply every day? We're talking about connecting cultures. How can I link that back to connecting cultures? Well, I help people work across cultures. Okay, that's one of the things I do. And this is probably the single most important reason for cross-cultural misunderstanding between, let's say, I hate the word the West, okay, and India. And I'll speak about India because this is the culture I know. So what does it mean practically? Take one person from each of these cultures, and they look at the same Outlook calendar in the morning. Okay, we're all familiar with Outlook calendar. And the person on the left, the task-driven person, is going to look at at what time their meeting is at. I have a meeting from 8 to 9, I have a meeting from 11 to 12, I have a meeting from 3 to 4. Then they're going to look at who the meeting is with. But the who is irrelevant to the timing. Whereas in a relationship-driven culture, the same Outlook calendar, the person who's going to look at it is going to first see who the meeting is with, and then at what time the meeting is at. And that's, there again, an essential and a critical difference in how we perceive time. Because for that relationship-driven person, if the meeting from 10 to 11 is with his boss or with his mom, or with her mom, I'm sorry, okay, if the meeting at 11:00 is not over, and if the boss still has something to say, or my mom still has something to say, I'll sit tight and I'll wait for them to finish, as a sign of respect for that relationship. Whereas for the task-driven one, 11 o'clock is 11 o'clock, whoever I'm speaking to. So when these two work together, very often we have that common stereotype, so common stereotype that people have about India. My God, people in India are always late. It's not true. It's not true. The way they manage their time is different. So yes, for task-driven people, it might seem like people are late, but not for them. And it's not a question of who's right or wrong, or not a question of who does it best or not. It's a question of what works for you and what works for me and what worked for my boss then. And that's what got me interested in the intercultural field. Okay, hopefully a few years later, still working on it, and that was the story of how I lost my first job in India and I got into the intercultural field. Thank you very much.